The twin suns of New Terra beat down on the wasteland like hammers on an anvil. Day One wiped the sweat from his forehead and squinted at the horizon. Nothing but red dust and broken rocks for miles. Exactly what he expected to find out here in the dead zones. He adjusted the heavy pack on his shoulders and kept walking. Inside the pack were the scraps he'd collected that morning. Old circuit boards, a cracked solar panel, some copper wiring that might still be worth something. Not much, but enough to pay for his room this week. Maybe enough for a hot meal too, if he got lucky at the trading post. Day One had been doing this for 3 years now, ever since he turned 16 and aged out of the orphanage. The managers let him keep a small room in the building, but they charged rent now. Fair enough. He wasn't a kid anymore, even if he felt like one sometimes. The wasteland was dangerous work, but it was honest work. Better than some of the other options in the colony. The explosion came without warning. A streak of fire tore across the sky, followed by a sound like thunder mixed with tearing metal. Day One dropped to the ground on instinct, covering his head. He'd seen meteor showers before, but this was different. This was controlled falling, not random space rock, a ship. Someone was crashing. He watched the vessel spiral down, trailing black smoke and sparks. It disappeared behind a ridge about 2 miles east. The impact shook the ground beneath him. Dust rose in a massive cloud, and then everything went silent again except for the wind. Day One stood slowly, his heart pounding. Every salvager in the colony knew the rules. Stay away from crash sites for at least 48 hours. Let the authorities handle it first. Let the original owners come looking. Getting caught stealing from a crash could mean prison time, or worse if the wrong people owned that ship. But something made him move toward the crash site anyway. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that he hadn't seen any rescue ships launching from the colony. Maybe it was just the stupid part of his brain that got him in trouble sometimes. The walk took 40 minutes. When Day One reached the ridge and looked down into the canyon, his breath caught in his throat. The ship was small, maybe a personal transport. The hull was crumpled like paper, and one wing had torn completely off. Smoke poured from a dozen cracks in the metal. But what made Day One's stomach drop were the shapes circling overhead. Scavenger drones, 3 of them, already scanning the wreckage. Those drones belonged to the pirates who operated out of the old warehouse district. They monitored emergency frequencies and sent their drones out fast whenever something valuable fell from the sky. If they were here already, it meant they'd be sending people soon. People with guns and no patience for witnesses. Day One should have left. Should have turned around and pretended he'd never seen anything. But then he noticed the emergency light blinking inside the cockpit. A soft blue pulse that meant someone inside might still be alive. He cursed under his breath and started climbing down the canyon wall. The descent was treacherous. Loose rocks scattered under his boots, and twice he nearly lost his grip. But Day One had grown up exploring these canyons. He knew how to move, where to put his weight. The drones hadn't spotted him yet, too focused on the ship itself. When he reached the canyon floor, he ran to the ship in a crouch. Up close, the damage looked even worse. The cockpit was partially caved in, and he had to wrench the emergency release 3 times before the hatch groaned open. The smell hit him first. Burned plastic and something else. Something organic but wrong. Then he saw the pilot, not human. Definitely not human. The creature was tall, even sitting down, with gray-blue skin and a face that looked almost human except for the extra joint in the jaw and the way the eyes sat too far apart. Velrothi. Day One recognized the species from news broadcasts. They were one of the major powers in the galaxy, known for their business empires and cold negotiations. This Velrothi was old. Day One could tell by the deep lines in the face and the white color of the short hair covering the head. He was also hurt badly. Blue blood darker than human blood stained the flight suit. The chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Above, one of the drones changed direction. Coming closer, Day One didn't think. He reached in and hit the seat release, then grabbed the Velrothi under the arms. The alien was heavy. Much heavier than a human of the same size. Day One's back screamed in protest as he pulled the body free of the wreckage. A drone spotted him. It dropped lower, scanning beams sweeping across the canyon floor. Day One dragged the Velrothi toward a crack in the canyon wall, a narrow space he'd hidden in once during a dust storm. His muscles burned. His lungs felt like they were on fire. The drone was getting closer, and he could hear its camera motors whirring. He shoved the Velrothi into the crack and squeezed in after him, pulling some loose rocks and debris across the entrance. The space was tight and dark. The drone passed overhead so close Day One could hear the hum of its engines. He held his breath, pressing back against the stone. The drone circled twice more, then moved away back toward the ship. Day One let out a shaky breath. The Velrothi groaned softly, still unconscious. In the dim light filtering through the rocks, Day One could see the injuries more clearly. Burns on the arms, a deep gash across the ribs, possible internal damage. He had no idea how to treat an alien. Barely knew how to treat humans beyond basic first aid, but he couldn't leave this person here to die. The pirates would find him eventually, and Day One had heard stories about what they did to valuable prisoners. There was a cave system deeper in the canyon, one he'd used as shelter before. It wasn't much, but it was hidden, safe, at least for a little while. Day One checked outside the crack. The drones had moved to the far side of the ship. Now or never. He pulled the Velrothi up again, getting a better grip this time, and started dragging him deeper into the canyon. Every few meters he stopped to rest and check behind them. His arms felt like rubber. The suns were starting to set, painting the sky orange and purple. It took 2 hours to reach the cave. By the time Day One pulled the Velrothi inside and collapsed against the wall, he was shaking with exhaustion. His water bottle was empty. His back would be covered in bruises tomorrow. The Velrothi's breathing had gotten worse, more ragged. Day One pulled out his flashlight and examined the wounds again. He'd need medical supplies, bandages, disinfectant, maybe antibiotics if he could afford them. That meant going back to the colony, spending the credits he'd just earned today. He looked at the unconscious alien and shook his head. 3 years of saving every credit, and he was about to blow it all on someone he didn't know. Someone who'd probably never even thank him. But he couldn't just watch someone die. That wasn't who he was. Day One stood up, his legs protesting. He'd have to move fast if he wanted to get supplies and make it back before dark. The wasteland was even more dangerous at night. He took one last look at the Velrothi, then headed out into the fading light. Behind him, the alien's chest continued to rise and fall, steady but weak. Alive for now. That would have to be enough. The next 4 days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and worry. Day One made the trip between the cave and the colony 6 times, each journey more dangerous than the last. The pirate drones were everywhere now, searching in wider patterns. Twice he had to hide for hours until they passed. He spent every credit he had on medical supplies. The woman at the black market stall gave him strange looks when he bought alien-compatible disinfectant and specialized bandages, but she didn't ask questions. That was the thing about black market dealers. They never asked questions. The Velrothi didn't wake up. His breathing stayed shallow and the fever came on the 2nd day. Day One had no idea if the medicine he was using even worked on alien biology. He just kept cleaning the wounds, changing the bandages, and hoping. He dripped water into the Velrothi's mouth when he could, though most of it just ran down the side of his face. On the 3rd day, Day One fell asleep sitting against the cave wall and dreamed of his parents. He hadn't thought about them in months. In the dream, his mother was bandaging his knee after he'd fallen off the playground equipment. She'd been so gentle, so patient, a doctor who'd died treating patients she couldn't save. He woke up to find the Velrothi's eyes open, staring at him. Day One jerked back, his hand automatically going to the small knife at his belt. The alien's eyes were a deep amber color, sharp and intelligent despite the pain that must have been coursing through his body. They stared at each other in silence for a long moment. The Velrothi spoke first, his voice rough and accented but understandable. "Where am I?" "A cave," Day One said. "In the wasteland outside New Terra Colony. You crashed 4 days ago." The alien's eyes narrowed. "You pulled me from my ship." It wasn't a question, but Day One nodded anyway. "Why?" The Velrothi tried to sit up, then gasped and fell back. His hand went to his ribs where the worst injury was. "Don't move," Day One said quickly. "You're hurt pretty bad. I've been trying to help, but I don't know much about Velrothi medicine. You are human." The alien said it like an accusation. "Yeah, I'm human." The Velrothi closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was something calculating in his gaze. "What do you want?" "Want?" "For saving my life. For the medical care. For hiding me." The alien's voice was cold, businesslike. "What is your price?" Day One blinked. "I don't want anything. Everyone wants something. Well, I don't. Daewon stood up and grabbed his water bottle. You should drink. You've been fevered. He helped the Velrothi sit up enough to drink. The alien watched him the entire time with those sharp amber eyes, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. When he'd had enough water, Daewon lowered him back down. What is your name? The Velrothi asked. Daewon. I am Thoran. A pause. You said I crashed. Do you know why? Daewon shook his head. Your ship just came down. I was out scavenging and saw it happen. There are pirate drones searching for the wreckage. That's why I moved you here. It's not safe near the crash site. Thoran's jaw tightened. Pirates. Of course. He looked around the cave, taking in the rough stone walls, the small camping supplies Daewon had brought. This is where you live? No, I have a room in the colony. This is just a place I know. Somewhere safe. Safe. Thoran laughed, but it turned into a cough that made him wince. I was traveling alone. That was foolish. I thought I could avoid attention, but someone must have tracked me anyway. Why were you alone? Thoran's eyes fixed on him again. Personal reasons. The answer was clearly meant to shut down that line of questioning. Daewon shrugged and started checking the bandages. The wounds were healing, at least. Slower than human wounds would heal, but healing. Over the next day, they talked in short bursts. Thoran would ask questions and Daewon would answer. Where was New Terra? How many humans lived here? What was the colony's economy like? Daewon answered honestly. There wasn't much to tell. New Terra was a frontier colony, barely 40 years old, maybe 5,000 people. They mined rare minerals and traded with passing ships. Life was hard, but people made it work. Eventually, Daewon started asking his own questions. What's your homeworld like? Thoran was quiet for a long time. Velrath Prime is nothing like this place. Cities that stretch for hundreds of miles. Technology beyond what you have here. Order and structure and everything. Sounds nice. It is efficient. Thoran paused. Your colony seems chaotic. Maybe, but people help each other here. We have to, or we wouldn't survive. Help each other. Thoran said it like he was testing the words. At what cost? No cost. That's the point. Thoran looked at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. Everything has a cost. Daewon didn't know how to explain it. In Thoran's world, maybe everything did have a cost. But here in the colony, people understood that sometimes you helped because it was the right thing to do. You helped because someday you might need help too. On the 5th day, Thoran was strong enough to sit up on his own. Daewon had brought food from the colony. Simple stuff like dried protein bars and canned soup. He heated the soup over a small thermal unit and handed a bowl to Thoran. The Velrothi sniffed it suspiciously. What is this? Vegetable soup. It's safe for Velrothi. I checked. Thoran ate slowly, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he set the bowl aside. You have spent considerable resources on me. Time, money, supplies. You have put yourself at risk. And you claim you want nothing in return. That's right. I do not understand your species. Daewon smiled a little. We don't always understand ourselves either. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in Thoran's eyes. Tell me about yourself. You said you were scavenging. That is your profession? So Daewon told him. About being an orphan. About his parents dying in the plague that swept through the colony 10 years ago. About growing up in the orphanage with 24 other kids, all of them forming a makeshift family. About aging out and trying to make it on his own. Thoran listened without interrupting. When Daewon finished, the Velrothi was quiet for a long moment. Your parents were medical professionals? Yeah, doctors. They could have fled the plague. Protected themselves, they could have, but they didn't. They stayed and tried to help people. And died for it. And saved a lot of people before they died. Daewon corrected. That mattered to them. Helping people. Thoran stared at the cave ceiling. In Velrothi culture, such a choice would be considered foolish. Wasteful of valuable resources. Maybe. But it's not wasteful if you think people are worth saving. Daewon started packing up the medical supplies. You should rest more. I need to head back to the colony before dark. Daewon. Thoran's voice stopped him at the cave entrance. Thank you. The words sounded awkward, like Thoran wasn't used to saying them. Daewon turned back and saw something different in the alien's face. Not quite friendship, but not hostility either. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. You're welcome, Daewon said. As he made his way back through the wasteland, the sun setting behind him, Daewon thought about what Thorin had said, about everything having a cost. Maybe in the bigger galaxy that was true, but here, in this small colony on the edge of nowhere, people still remembered that some things were more important than credits. He just hoped he could keep Thorin safe long enough for the alien to see that too. Behind him, hidden in the cave, Thorin lay awake staring at the rough stone ceiling. For the first time in his very long life, his carefully organized understanding of the universe had begun to crack. This human boy had saved him, cared for him, and asked for nothing. It made no sense. It violated every principle of Velrothi society, and yet it had happened. Thorin closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept returning to one simple, troubling question. If a human could act without expecting payment, what did that say about the Velrothi way of life? He had no answer. Not yet. The trouble started on the 6th day. Daewon was walking through the colony market when he heard people talking. A group of men stood near the water distributor, their voices low but urgent. He slowed down, pretending to look at some salvaged electronics on a nearby table. Velrothi ship, one man was saying, has to be worth millions. The pirates are offering 50,000 credits for information. 50,000? Another whistled. For just information? What's so special about this one? Who cares? That's enough to buy passage off this rock. Daewon's blood ran cold. 50,000 credits was more money than most colonists saw in 5 years. People would sell out their own families for that kind of reward. And if the pirates were offering that much just for information, it meant they wanted whatever was in that ship very badly, or whoever had been flying it. He moved away from the group quickly, his mind racing. The cave wasn't safe anymore. If people were actively searching, someone would eventually check all the known shelters in the wasteland. He needed to move Thorin somewhere else, somewhere more secure. The problem was there weren't many options. The colony itself was too dangerous, too many eyes, but staying in the wasteland meant being exposed to searchers. Daewon headed toward the eastern edge of the colony, where the old industrial section slowly crumbled into dust. Most of the factories had shut down years ago when the mining operations shifted to a different sector. Now it was just empty buildings and broken machinery. He was so focused on his thoughts that he almost walked right past the noodle stand. Daewon. He turned to see Bora waving at him from behind her small counter. Her stand was just a repurposed cargo container with a cooking surface and a few stools. But she made the best noodles in the colony. She was a few years older than him, maybe 23, with a kind face and quick smile. "Hey, Bora. You look worried. Everything okay?" She was already preparing a bowl without asking, the way she always did when she saw him. "Yeah, just busy. How's business?" "Slow today." She handed him the bowl. "Here, on the house. Bora, you can't keep giving me free food. I can do what I want with my noodles." She smiled. "Besides, you helped me fix my refrigeration unit last month. I owe you." Daewon took the bowl and ate quickly. The noodles were good, hot and filling. As he ate, he noticed Bora watching him with concern. "You're sure everything's okay?" she asked. "You seem distracted," he hesitated. Bora was trustworthy, one of the few people in the colony he considered a friend. But telling her about Thorin would put her in danger. The less she knew, the safer she was. "Just work stuff," he said. "Nothing serious." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. That was one of the things he liked about Bora. She respected boundaries. After he finished eating, Daewon headed back toward his room to gather supplies. He'd need to move Thorin tonight under cover of darkness. The old mining facility to the north might work. It was farther from the colony, but more secure. He was climbing the stairs to his floor when he saw them. 2 men standing outside his door. They weren't colony security. Too well armed, too clean. Mercenaries, probably working for the pirates. Daewon turned and walked away as casually as he could. His heart hammered in his chest. Had they connected him to the crash somehow? Or were they just checking everyone who lived near the wasteland? He couldn't go back to his room now. Couldn't risk leading them to Thorin. He needed to warn the alien, get him moved immediately. The problem was, it was still daylight. Moving through the wasteland during the day meant being visible to drones. But he didn't have a choice. Daewon took a roundabout route out of the colony, using the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the streets. The tunnels were old and poorly maintained, but he knew them well. They'd been his escape route as a kid whenever he got in trouble at the orphanage. It took an hour to reach the wasteland exit. When he finally emerged, the suns were high and brutal. He pulled his hood up and started the trek to the cave. 3 times he had to dive behind rocks when drones passed overhead. The pirates were definitely increasing their search pattern. It was only a matter of time before they found the cave. When he finally reached the cave entrance, he found Thorin sitting up, looking much stronger than he had days before. The Velrothi's eyes sharpened when he saw Daewon's expression. What happened? We need to move now. Daewon quickly explained about the increased reward, the mercenaries at his door, the expanding search. Thorin listened calmly, then nodded. I can walk. Where will we go? There's an old mining facility about 5 miles north. It's abandoned, but the structure is solid. Underground sections where we can hide. 5 miles in daylight with search drones active. Thorin stood carefully, testing his balance. Risky. Everything's risky now. Thorin looked at him for a long moment. You could turn me in. Collect the reward. 50,000 credits would change your life. I'm not turning you in. Why not? I am nothing to you. An alien you happen to save. You owe me nothing. Daewon met his eyes. And you'd do the same in my position? Turn someone in for money? Thorin opened his mouth, then closed it. After a moment, he said quietly, A week ago I would have said yes without hesitation. Now I'm not certain. That's progress, I guess. Come on, we need to move while we still can. They packed quickly. Thorin moved slowly but steadily. His injuries healing faster than Daewon had expected. Maybe Velrothi biology was tougher than human. They'd need that toughness for the journey ahead. The trip to the mining facility was a nightmare. They had to stop and hide 7 times when drones passed overhead. Once, a search team on foot came within 100 meters of their position. Daewon and Thorin lay flat behind a ridge, barely breathing, while the men scanned the area below. By the time they reached the facility, both were exhausted. The building was a massive structure of concrete and steel, half buried by sand drifts. Daewon led them to a side entrance he'd discovered months ago, a broken door that led into the underground levels. Inside, the air was cool and still. Emergency lighting still functioned in some sections, casting everything in a dim red glow. Daewon guided them down 3 levels to a storage area far from any entrance. This will work, Thorin said, looking around. Defensible, hidden with multiple escape routes if needed. They set up a basic camp. Daewon had brought water and food, some blankets, his medical kit. It wasn't much, but it would keep them alive for a while. As they settled in, Thorin said, I need to contact my people. I have been missing for nearly a week. They will be searching. Can you do that without alerting the pirates? Perhaps. I have a personal communicator, but it was damaged in the crash. If you could retrieve it from my ship, I might be able to repair it. Daewon shook his head. Your ship is probably crawling with pirates by now. Going back there would be suicide. Then we wait. Eventually my people will find me. And how long will that take? Thorin was quiet. I do not know. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Daewon said, Who are you really? Important enough that pirates are offering 50,000 credits just for information. Important enough that you travel alone. You're not just some random Velrothi. Thorin looked at him and something shifted in his expression, a decision being made. No, I am not. Before he could say more, they heard footsteps above them. Multiple people moving through the facility. Daewon and Thorin froze. A voice echoed down from the upper levels. Search everything. They have to be here somewhere. Taesung wants them found by nightfall. Taesung. Daewon knew that name. A mercenary leader with a reputation for violence and cruelty. If he was involved, things had just gotten much worse. Thorin whispered, Can we escape without being seen? Daewon thought quickly. The storage level had 3 exits. One led back up where the searchers were. The other 2 led deeper into the facility, into the old mine shafts themselves. Dark, dangerous, and unmapped. But possibly their only chance. Follow me, he whispered. And stay quiet. They moved through the darkness, feeling their way along the walls. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. Someone had found the entrance to the lower levels. Daewon's hand found a door handle. He pulled it open slowly, wincing at the soft creak of hinges. Beyond was pure darkness and the smell of earth and old machinery. They slipped inside and closed the door behind them just as lights appeared in the corridor they'd just left. Daewon held his breath, his hand on Thorin's arm to keep him still. On the other side of the door, someone walked past. then another, then silence. They waited for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, Day One risked pulling out his small flashlight. The beam revealed a tunnel stretching into the darkness, old mining equipment lining the walls. "We'll follow this for a while," he whispered. "Put some distance between us and them. Then we'll figure out our next move." Thoran nodded. In the dim light, his face looked drawn but determined. They started walking into the darkness, leaving the searchers behind. But both of them knew this was only temporary. The net was closing. Soon they'd run out of places to hide. And then what? Day One didn't have an answer. He just knew he wasn't giving up. Not yet. They walked through the mine tunnels for hours, the only sound their footsteps and breathing. The beam from Day One's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing ancient machinery and walls carved from solid rock. The air smelled of dust and minerals and got colder the deeper they went. Finally, they found a side chamber that looked safe enough to rest in. Day One checked the entrance carefully, then set up their supplies. They had enough food and water for maybe 5 days if they were careful. After that, he'd need to risk going back to the colony. Thoran sat against the wall with a groan. His injuries were healing, but the long walk had clearly taken its toll. Day One handed him water and some protein bars. "Thank you," Thoran said. The words came easier now, more natural. They ate in silence for a while. Then Thoran spoke again. "You should leave me here. Go back to your life. You have already done more than anyone could expect. We've been over this." "Yes, but now it is different. That mercenary, Tae-sung, he has a reputation. He will not stop searching. He will tear apart the entire colony if he thinks it will lead him to me." Thoran's amber eyes reflected the flashlight beam. "You could die because of me. I could die scavenging in the wasteland too. At least this way I'm dying for something that matters. Your life matters. So does yours." Thoran shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. In my culture, individual lives are measured by their contribution to society. A worker is worth less than a scientist. A scientist is worth less than a leader. It is simply how things are. That's a terrible way to look at people. Perhaps, but it is efficient. Resources go where they provide the most benefit." Thoran paused. "By that measure, your life has little value. You are an orphan, a scavenger with no family and no significant skills, and yet you risk everything for someone you do not know, because it's the right thing to do. But why is it the right thing? What benefit do you gain?" Day One thought about it. "I don't know how to explain it to you, it just is. My parents taught me that everyone matters, that we help people because we're all connected somehow. Like a net, you know? If one part breaks, the whole thing gets weaker." Thoran was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Tell me more about your parents," so Day One did. He told Thoran about his father, who used to take him to the observatory to look at stars. About his mother, who sang while she cooked and always had a smile for everyone. About the plague that swept through the colony and the choice they'd made to stay and help instead of fleeing. "They worked 20-hour days," Day One said. "Both of them. Trying to save people. They were so tired they could barely stand, but they kept going. And when they got sick themselves, they used their last strength to train other people to take over. That seems wasteful. They could have saved themselves. Maybe. But they saved 37 people before they died. 37 people who are still alive today, who have families now. My mom used to say that ripples matter. That one good act creates more good acts. Those 37 people remember what my parents did. And maybe when they see someone who needs help, they remember and help too." Thoran stared at the cave ceiling. "Ripples. I have never thought of it that way." Over the next few days, they talked more. Trapped together in the dark mine, there was little else to do. Thoran told Day One about Velrath Prime, about cities that stretched so high they touched the clouds. He described his education, learning mathematics and economics and negotiation from the time he could walk. "We are taught that emotion is weakness," Thoran said, "that decisions should be made based on logic and benefit. Not feeling. That sounds lonely. It is efficient. That's not the same thing." Thoran smiled slightly, an expression that looked strange on his alien features. "No, it is not." On the 4th day, Day One's water purifier broke. It had been acting up for a while, but now it was completely dead. Without it, they'd run out of safe drinking water in less than a day. Day One took the device apart, trying to find the problem. One of the main circuits had fried, probably from overuse. He had some spare parts in his kit, but nothing that would work as a direct replacement. I might be able to jury-rig something, he muttered, laying out components. If I use this connector here and reroute the power through this secondary circuit, Thorin watched with interest. You have engineering knowledge? Not really. I just fix a lot of broken stuff. You learn by doing. Daewon frowned at the tangle of wires. Everything in the colony is held together with improvisation and hope. May I help? Daewon glanced at him surprised. You know engineering? I know many things. Velrathi children receive extensive education. Thorin moved closer, examining the device. This design is inefficient. If you rearrange these components and add a feedback loop here, it will work better than before. They worked together for the next hour. Thorin's knowledge combined with Daewon's practical experience created something that was genuinely better than the original design. When they finally tested it, clean water flowed smoothly. We make a good team, Daewon said. Thorin looked at the purifier thoughtfully. Yes, we do. That night, Daewon woke to find Thorin sitting up, his face twisted in pain. The Velrathi was gripping his side, his breathing harsh. What's wrong? Daewon asked, reaching for the medical kit. One of my wounds. I think it is infected. Daewon checked the injury. The skin around it was darker than normal, swollen and hot to the touch. Not good. He'd been changing the bandages regularly, but infection was always a risk, especially with limited medical supplies. He cleaned the wound again and applied fresh antibiotics, but he could see it wasn't enough. This needed real medical attention, the kind he couldn't provide in a mine shaft. Thorin watched his face. It is bad? Could be worse. Could be better. Daewon sat back. You need proper medical care. Velrathi medicine, probably, which I cannot get without revealing my location. They both knew what that meant. The infection would either heal on its own, or it would get worse. If it got worse, Thorin would die here in the dark. Daewon made a decision. I'm going back to the colony. Too dangerous. I have a friend there, Bora. She might be able to help. And if she cannot? If she turns you in for the reward? She won't. Daewon started packing a small bag. Bora's good people. I trust her. Thorin reached out and grabbed his arm. Daewon, you barely know this woman. You are risking your life on a guess about her character. Sometimes that's all you can do. Trust people and hope you're right. That is not how I have lived my life. Maybe it should be. Thorin released his arm slowly. If you do not return, I will not be able to follow. I am too weak to travel far alone. Then I better return. Daewon smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Besides, you still haven't told me who you really are. Can't let you take that secret to the grave. If you get me proper medical attention, I will tell you everything. Deal. Daewon made his way back through the tunnels, following the marks he'd left on the walls. The journey to the surface took 3 hours. When he finally emerged, it was late afternoon, the sun's casting long shadows. The colony looked the same as always, but Daewon felt the weight of eyes watching. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe the mercenaries really were everywhere. He pulled his hood up and headed toward the market district. Bora's noodle stand was open. She was serving a customer when Daewon approached, and her eyes went wide when she saw him. She quickly finished with the customer, then gestured him to the back of the stand. Daewon, everyone's looking for you. There are men asking questions, offering money for information about you. I know. Bora, I need your help. What kind of help? He took a deep breath. This was the moment. Either she'd help or she'd turn him in. He had to trust his instincts about her character. I need medical supplies. Advanced antibiotics if you can get them, and something to treat a serious infection. She studied his face. You're not hurt. It's not for me. Bora was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Wait here. She disappeared into the back of her stand. Daewon waited, his heart pounding. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, she returned with a small package. I know someone in the medical district. He owes me a favor. She handed him the package. This should help with infection. But Daewon, whatever you're involved in, it's dangerous. Those men looking for you, they're serious. I know. Is it worth it? Whatever you're doing? Daewon thought of Thorin lying in the dark mine, his life depending on these supplies. Yeah, it's worth it. Bora nodded slowly. Okay, be careful. And if you need more help, you know where to find me. Thank you, Bora. Just come back alive, okay? I'd hate to lose my best customer. Daewon smiled and headed back toward the wasteland. He moved carefully, watching for followers. Twice he had to take long detours to shake people who might have been watching him. By the time he made it back to the mine entrance, night had fallen. The journey back through the tunnels felt longer than before, but eventually he found the chamber where he'd left Thorin. The Velrathi was lying down, his breathing shallow. When he heard Daewon enter, his eyes opened. "You returned?" "Of course I did." Daewon knelt beside him and opened the package. Bora came through. "Let's get you fixed up." As he worked on cleaning and treating the wound, Thorin watched him silently. Finally, he said, "You trusted your friend and she did not fail you. Told you." "Yes, you did." Thorin winced as Daewon applied fresh bandages. "Perhaps there is some the antibiotics worked." Over the next 2 days, Thorin's infection cleared and his strength returned. They stayed hidden in the mine chamber, talking more freely now that the truth was out. Daewon asked questions about the consortium, about Thorin's life, about what it meant to be one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "It means being alone," Thorin said quietly. "Everyone wants something from you. Every friendship is a transaction. Every conversation is a negotiation. I have advisors, employees, business partners, but I have not had a friend in more years than you have been alive. That's sad. It is simply reality." Thorin shrugged. "Or it was. This experience has made me question many things about my life." On the 3rd day, Bora found them. Daewon had given her general directions to the mine as a backup plan, and she'd used them. She arrived carrying a bag of food and news that made Daewon's blood run cold. "The mercenaries raided the orphanage," she said, her face pale. "They're holding people there. They're saying they'll hurt them unless you turn yourself in." Daewon stood so fast he nearly dropped his water bottle. "What? Who? How many?" "Maybe 20 people. The staff, some of the younger kids who are still there, a few of the older ones who were visiting." Bora's hands were shaking. "They're saying they know you have something valuable, and if you don't bring it to them by sunset tomorrow, they'll start killing hostages." "No." Daewon started pacing. No. Those people have nothing to do with this. They don't even know what I've been doing." Thorin stood carefully. "This Taezung, he is trying to force your hand. He knows you will not let innocent people die for you." "Of course I won't." Daewon whirled on him. "Those are my people. The staff raised me. Some of those kids, I grew up with them. I can't just let them die. So you will trade my life for theirs." Daewon stopped. He looked at Thorin, then at Bora, then back at Thorin. His mind raced through possibilities, but they all came back to the same conclusion. He'd have to turn Thorin in. There was no other choice, "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I can't let them die. I just can't." Thorin was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I understand. And I do not blame you. You have already given me more than I had any right to expect." He walked closer to Daewon. "But before you make this decision, let me tell you what will happen. Taesung will take me and kill everyone anyway. He cannot leave witnesses. Those people are already dead. You don't know that. I have dealt with men like him for centuries. I know exactly what he will do." Thorin placed a hand on Daewon's shoulder. "There is another option." "What option?" "We're trapped in a mine shaft with no weapons, no backup, and a deadline of sunset tomorrow. We call my fleet." Daewon shook his head. "You said your communicator was damaged in the ship with the pirates. I have another way." Thorin reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device that Daewon had never seen before. It was no bigger than a coin with a single button. An emergency beacon. "It will broadcast my location and identity directly to my flagship. They will come immediately." "Then why didn't you use it before?" "Because my rivals want me dead. If I broadcast my location, they will know I survived. They will send assassins, more mercenaries, entire fleets if necessary. It will turn this colony into a war zone." Thorin looked at the beacon. "I was hoping to find another way. But now we have no choice," Bora spoke up. "How long until your fleet arrives?" "Hours, perhaps as few as 3 or 4. "That's not fast enough," Daewon said. "Sunset is in 15 hours. Even if your fleet gets here, Taesung will kill the hostages as soon as he realizes what's happening." "Unless we move first," Thorin said. "We strike at the orphanage before my fleet arrives." "Strike with what?" "We have one knife and a broken water purifier." Thorin smiled grimly. "We have something more valuable. We have knowledge of the building and we have desperation." He looked at Bora. "Tell me about this orphanage. How many entrances? What is the layout?" Bora described it while Daewon listened in growing amazement. Thorin was planning an actual assault. Him and Day One against trained mercenaries with weapons. This is insane, Day One said. We'll die. Probably, Thorin agreed. But at least we will die trying to save innocent people. Is that not the human way? Despite everything, Day One found himself smiling. Yeah, I guess it is. They spent the next hour planning. Bora drew a map of the orphanage in the dirt. Thorin asked questions about security, about sightlines, about the building's weaknesses. Day One added his knowledge from years of living there, every hiding spot and secret passage he'd discovered as a child. Finally, they had a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was something. I can help too, Bora said. I know people in the colony. People who remember what the orphanage did for them, or for their kids. If we're doing this, we shouldn't do it alone. It's too dangerous, Day One said. So is everything else. Bora met his eyes. Those are our people in there. Our community. We take care of our own. Thorin watched this exchange with an expression Day One couldn't quite read. Finally, the Velrothi said, In my culture, this would never happen. Civilians would not risk themselves for others. They would wait for authorities, for professionals. Well, we're not Velrothi, Bora said simply. No, you are not. Thorin activated the beacon. A soft pulse of light confirmed it was working. My fleet will arrive in approximately 4 hours. We should move now. They made their way out of the mine and back toward the colony. Bora went ahead to gather whoever would help. Day One and Thorin followed more carefully, staying to the shadows. The colony looked normal on the surface, but Day One could feel the tension in the air. People were scared. Mercenaries patrolled the streets openly now, not even trying to hide their presence. This was occupation, not just a search. They met Bora at the back of her noodle stand. She'd brought 6 people with her. Day One recognized them all. There was Jinho, who ran the mechanical repair shop. He-Wan, who taught at the small school. 4 others, all of them older residents who'd been part of the colony for years. This is everyone? Day One asked. Everyone who could come on short notice, Bora said. And everyone brave enough to try something this crazy. Jinho stepped forward. Those mercenaries have my nephew in there. I'm not letting them hurt him. The others nodded in agreement. They were scared. Day One could see it in their faces. But they were here. That was what mattered. Thorin addressed them all. I'm grateful for your help. What we are about to do is extremely dangerous. Many of us may not survive. If anyone wishes to leave, do so now with no shame. No one moved. Very well. Thorin outlined the plan. It was simple because it had to be. They would split into 3 groups. One would create a distraction at the front of the orphanage. Another would cut the power to the building. The third, led by Day One and Thorin, would infiltrate through the old maintenance tunnels and free the hostages. What about weapons? Hai-Wan asked. They have guns. We have nothing. Jinho reached into his bag and pulled out several old mining tools. Not nothing. I brought what I could from my shop. Cutting torches, welding irons, some heavy wrenches. He grinned. Not guns, but better than bare hands. Thorin examined the tools thoughtfully. I can work with this. Day One, you and I will need something to disable the mercenaries without killing them if possible. Why not kill them? One of the others asked. Because then we are no better than they are, Thorin said quietly. And because it is not the human way. Day One looked at him in surprise. The Velrothi who'd arrived on this planet had believed in cold efficiency and transactional relationships. This Thorin was different, changed. They moved out as the suns began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The orphanage was on the eastern edge of the colony, a squat concrete building that had been there since the colony's founding. It looked normal from the outside, but Day One could see the guards posted at the entrances. The distraction team moved into position. Bora was with them, which made Day One nervous, but she'd insisted. I'm not letting you have all the fun, she'd said. Jinho led the power team toward the main junction box. That left Day One, Thorin, and Hai-Wan to attempt the infiltration. They waited in the shadows behind the building. Day One's heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. His palms were sweaty and he kept checking the knife at his belt even though he knew it was there. Afraid? Thorin asked quietly. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alert. The Velrothi checked his makeshift weapon, a heavy wrench wrapped with some of the electrical wiring. I must tell you something, Day One. If I survive this, I intend to change how the Velrothi Consortium operates, to introduce some of these human concepts. Compassion, community. It will be difficult and many will oppose me. Why are you telling me this now? Because I may not have another chance. And because you should know that you have changed me. One human with nothing but kindness and courage has changed one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Thorin smiled. Your mother was right about ripples. Before Daewon could respond, the distraction started. An explosion rocked the front of the building, followed by shouts and the sound of mercenaries running. Jinho had done his job. The lights went out. Perfect timing. Now, Thorin whispered. They moved toward the Mainte. The maintenance tunnel was exactly as Daewon remembered it from his childhood. Low ceiling, narrow walls, pipes running along both sides. He'd hidden here countless times playing games with the other orphans. Now he was crawling through it to save their lives. Thoran moved behind him, surprisingly quiet for someone so large. Haiwan brought up the rear, carrying one of Jinho's cutting torches. The tunnel was pitch black with the power out, but Daewon knew every inch of it. He'd counted the pipes as a kid, memorized every turn. They reached the access panel that led into the basement. Daewon pressed his ear against it, listening. Voices above, footsteps, but nothing nearby. He carefully pushed the panel open. The basement was dark except for emergency lighting that cast everything in red. Storage rooms, old equipment, the furnace system, and at the far end, stairs leading up to the main floor where the hostages were being held. They moved through the basement like ghosts. Daewon led them past the storage rooms to a position beneath the main hall. Above, he could hear mercenaries talking. Boss wants this wrapped up fast, one voice said. Says something's got him spooked. Just some colonists making noise. Nothing we can't handle. Yeah, but he's acting weird. Keep your eyes open. The mercenaries moved away. Daewon looked at Thoran and Haiwan, then pointed up. Time to move. They climbed the stairs slowly. At the top, Daewon peered around the corner into the main hall. The sight made his chest tight with anger. 23 people sat on the floor, their hands bound. He recognized all of them. Mrs. Kang, who'd run the orphanage kitchen and always snuck him extra food. Young Shung-ho, barely 12 years old, his face streaked with tears. Others, people who'd shaped his childhood, now prisoners in their own home. 6 mercenaries guarded them. 6 men with guns against 3 people with improvised weapons. The odds were terrible, but they had surprise on their side. Maybe. Daewon caught a glimpse of Tae-sung standing near the far window, talking into a communicator. The mercenary leader was exactly as Daewon had imagined, tall, scarred, with the dead eyes of someone who'd killed too many times to count. We need to separate them, Thoran whispered. Draw some away from the main group. Haiwan held up the cutting torch. I can cause a fire in the west storage room. That'll get their attention. Too dangerous with hostages in the building, Daewon said. We need something else. Above them, the building shuddered. Another explosion from Bo-Ra's distraction team. The mercenaries shifted nervously. Tae-sung barked orders. 2 of you, check that out. The rest, stay alert. 2 mercenaries headed for the front entrance. That left 4 plus Tae-sung. Better odds, but still bad. Then Daewon had an idea. There was an old intercom system in the building, one that ran on battery backup. If he could reach the control panel in the administrator's office, he could broadcast throughout the building. He signaled to Thoran, pointing down the hallway. The Velrathi nodded, understanding. They split up. Haiwan would stay and watch the hostages, ready to act when the moment came. Thoran would position himself near the main hall entrance. Daewon would try for the intercom. Moving through the darkened orphanage was surreal. Daewon had spent 10 years here, and every corner held memories. The room where he'd learned to read. The hallway where he'd had his first fight. The kitchen where he'd helped prepare meals. He reached the administrator's office and slipped inside. The door was unlocked, and the intercom panel glowed softly with battery power. He flipped switches, bringing the system online. What would he say? What could he possibly say that would help? Then he remembered what his mother used to tell him. The truth is powerful. Lies can be complicated, but the truth is simple. Daewon pressed the broadcast button. Tae-sung, he said, his voice echoing through the building's speakers. My name is Daewon. I'm the one you're looking for. In the main hall, he could hear the mercenaries scrambling. Tae-sung shouted orders. I know what you want, Daewon continued. The Velrathi you're hunting. But here's something you should know. Help is coming. A Velrathi fleet. They'll be here within the hour. And when they arrive, they're going to ask what happened to their supreme trade lord. He let that sink in. In the hall, voices rose in confusion. That's right. The alien I saved isn't just anyone. He's one of the 5 most powerful beings in the galaxy, and you've been holding innocent people hostage to get to him. Daewon's voice grew stronger. So here's my offer. Let the hostages go now. Leave this colony and maybe you'll survive what's coming. Or stay and explain to a Velrathi battle fleet why you kidnapped and threatened to kill innocent humans. Silence. Then Taesung's voice cold and hard. Nice try, kid. But I don't believe you. If the Velrathi was that important, he wouldn't have been flying alone in a small ship. He was traveling in secret, Daewon said, because someone in his own government tried to assassinate him. And he's very interested in talking to whoever finds out who hired you. More silence. Daewon could almost hear Taesung thinking, calculating odds. Had someone hired him? Would a fleet really come? Then Taesung laughed. You're bluffing. But even if you're not, I'll be long gone with my prize before any fleet arrives. Thanks for the warning, though. His voice hardened. Now come out or I start shooting hostages. You have 60 seconds. Daewon's mind raced. The bluff hadn't worked, now what? The answer came from an unexpected direction. The front doors of the orphanage burst open and people poured in. Not mercenaries, colonists. Dozens of them, armed with tools and mining equipment and makeshift weapons. Bora was at the front, her face set with determination. Nobody's shooting anybody, she shouted. The mercenaries spun to face this new threat. For a moment, everyone froze. Then chaos erupted. Daewon ran from the office. Thorin emerged from his hiding spot, moving with surprising speed despite his injuries. Haiwan rushed forward with the cutting torch, its flame bright in the darkness. What followed was not a clean fight. It was messy and desperate and terrifying. The colonists had numbers, but the mercenaries had training and weapons. But what the colonists had that the mercenaries didn't was something more powerful. They were fighting for their home, for their people, for everything that mattered. Daewon reached the main hall as one of the mercenaries turned his weapon toward the hostages. Without thinking, Daewon threw himself forward, tackling the man. They went down hard, the gun skittering across the floor. The mercenary was stronger, better trained. He flipped Daewon over and started choking him. Daewon's vision began to gray at the edges. Then suddenly the pressure released. Thorin had pulled the mercenary off and thrown him against the wall. Thank you, Daewon gasped. We are not finished yet, Thorin said. Across the hall, Bora and Jinho were working together to free the hostages. The colonists had pushed the mercenaries back, using their numbers to overwhelm trained fighters. But Taesung was still standing, still dangerous. The mercenary leader had grabbed young Sung-ho, holding the boy in front of him like a shield. Everyone stop or the kid dies. The room froze. Sung-ho was crying, terrified. Taesung had a knife to his throat. I'm walking out of here, Taesung said. Anyone tries to stop me, the boy dies. Anyone follows me, the boy dies. Everyone understand? He started backing toward the door, dragging Sung-ho with him. The colonists parted, helpless. Nobody wanted to risk the child's life. Daewon looked at Thorin. The Velrathi's expression was cold, calculating. He was measuring distances, angles, probabilities. Then his eyes met Daewon's and something passed between them. An understanding. Thorin stepped forward. Let the boy go. Take me instead, Taesung laughed. Finally, the grand prize shows himself. But why would I trade a hostage I have for one I might lose? Because I will come willingly. No fight, no struggle. And I am worth considerably more than a child. You're worth more dead or alive. The kid just guarantees safe passage. True. But alive I can tell you who hired the assassins that sabotaged my ship. Don't you want to know who set you up? That made Taesung pause. Set me up? You think this was coincidence? Someone knew I would crash here. Someone knew you operate in this region. Someone used you as a convenient tool to eliminate me. Thorin took another step forward. Let me guess. The job came through unusual channels. Payment up front. Employer anonymous, Taesung's eyes narrowed. So? So you have been played. And when my fleet arrives, they will assume you were part of the assassination plot. Every mercenary who participated will be hunted across the galaxy. Thorin smiled coldly. Unless you can prove otherwise. Unless you can give them the real conspirators. Daewon could see the calculation in Taesung's face. Greed warring with self-preservation. Finally, the mercenary shoved Sung-ho away. The boy ran to Mrs. Kang, who pulled him close. Fine. You and me, we walk out together. Everyone else stays. Agreed. No. Daewon started forward, but Thorin held up a hand. It is all right. This is the best option. I'm not letting him take you. Thoran smiled. Trust me, Day One. As I trusted you. Before Day One could respond, the entire building shook. Not an explosion this time. Something else. Something massive landing outside. Through the windows, lights appeared. Bright, impossibly bright. The low thrum of massive engines filled the air. Taesung's face went pale. No, that's not possible. That's too fast. I told you, Day One said. The next 72 hours were the strangest of Day One's life. The colony was flooded with Velrathi officials, medical teams, investigators, and enough advanced technology to make his head spin. The mercenaries were taken into custody. The hostages received medical care. And Day One found himself in the center of a whirlwind he didn't fully understand. Thoran had been taken to his flagship immediately for medical treatment. The Velrathi doctors clucked over his injuries and the primitive care he'd received, but Day One noticed they looked at Thoran differently now. With a kind of confused respect, like they couldn't quite understand what had changed in their supreme trade lord. On the third day, Day One was summoned to the flagship. A shuttle picked him up from the colony landing pad. Bora came with him, partly for support and partly because she refused to be left behind. This is incredible, she whispered as they flew up to the massive ship hanging in orbit. I've never been off planet before. Day One had to admit it was impressive. The flagship was the size of a small city, its hull gleaming with technology he couldn't begin to understand. When they docked and entered, Velrathi crew members stopped to stare at them. Word had spread about the human who'd saved the Supreme Trade Lord. They were escorted to a conference room that was bigger than Day One's entire living space in the colony. Thoran was there, looking healthier than Day One had ever seen him. The injuries were healed, the exhaustion gone. He wore formal robes now instead of the damaged flight suit, and he looked every inch the powerful leader he was. But when he saw Day One, he smiled. That same warm smile that had developed over their days together in hiding. My friend, Thoran said, please sit. Day One and Bora sat in chairs that automatically adjusted to human proportions. The table between them held food and drinks from a dozen different worlds. I wanted to thank you properly, Thoran began. You saved my life. More than that, you showed me a different way of living, of thinking. I just did what anyone would do. No, what anyone should do, perhaps, but what almost no one actually does. Thoran stood and walked to the window, looking down at New Terra Colony. I have been thinking about what happens next. About my obligations and duties. Day One waited. He'd learned that Thoran liked to work through his thoughts out loud. In Velrathi culture, there is a concept called bond debt. It is the highest form of obligation, one that can never be fully repaid. It is reserved for those who save your life or change your destiny. Thoran turned back to them. I am declaring bond debt to you, Day One. This is unprecedented. A supreme trade lord has not declared bond debt in 3 generations, but it is the only appropriate response to what you have done. I don't need any debt, Day One said. I'm just glad you're okay. Nevertheless, it is declared. And there is more. Thoran's expression grew serious. I am extending secondary bonds to Bora, to the colonists who helped us, and to New Terra Colony itself. This colony is now under the official protection of the Velrathi Consortium. Bora gasped. What does that mean? It means investment, infrastructure, trade agreements on favorable terms, educational programs, medical facilities, everything this colony needs to thrive. Thoran smiled. It also means that New Terra becomes a demonstration project. I intend to use what I learned here to reshape how the consortium interacts with human colonies throughout the sector. Why? Day One asked. Because you were right. All of you. Compassion is not weakness. Community is not inefficient. And measuring worth only in credits misses everything that truly matters. Thoran sat down again. I am going to propose changes to the consortium. It will be difficult. Many will oppose me, but I believe it is necessary. They talked for hours. Thoran explained his plans, asked their opinions, treated them like valued advisors rather than simple colonists. It was strange and wonderful and overwhelming. Finally, Thoran looked directly at Day One. I have a proposal for you. Come work with me. Be my liaison to human colonies. Help me understand your people better. I can offer you wealth, status, access to technology and education beyond anything available on New Terra. Day One had known this was coming. He'd thought about it constantly over the past 3 days. What would happen to the colony? It would continue to receive support regardless of your decision. My bond debt exists independent of any employment arrangement. And I'd have to leave, not permanently. But you would travel extensively. Visit other colonies, attend consortium meetings, represent human interests in Velrothi space. It was everything Daewon had never dared to dream about, a chance to leave the wasteland behind, to see the galaxy, to be part of something bigger than himself. His parents would have been proud, but he thought about the colony, about the people there who knew his name, who'd fought beside him, about Bo-Ra and her noodle stand, about the orphanage and the memories held in every corner. I have a counter-proposal, Daewon said slowly. I'll work with you. I'll help however I can, but I want to stay based on New Terra, at least for now. Use me as your connection to the colony, but let me keep my roots here. Thorin studied him. You would give up the opportunity to live on Velrath Prime? To have access to everything the consortium can offer? I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing what matters to me. Daewon glanced at Bo-Ra, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Besides, someone needs to make sure you follow through on your promises. Who better than someone who lives here? Thoran laughed, a genuine sound of delight. You do not trust me to keep my word? I trust you completely, but I also know how big organizations work. People get distracted, priorities shift. New Terra needs someone to remind you why this matters. Very well. You will be my representative here, and my consultant on human affairs. You will have resources, authority, and access to me whenever needed. Thorin paused. But I warn you, this will still change your life dramatically. Are you prepared for that? Daewon thought about his small room in the orphanage, about scavenging in the wasteland for credits, about the uncertain future he'd always faced. I think I can handle a little change. Bo-Ra spoke up for the first time in a while. What about the rest of us? The people who helped? You will all be compensated appropriately. Those who wish to continue their current lives may do so with enhanced resources. Those who wish to pursue other opportunities will have my support. Thoran looked at her thoughtfully. You run a food service business, correct? A noodle stand, Bo-Ra corrected. Nothing fancy. Good food is never nothing fancy. I am told by my advisors that you are an excellent cook. Would you be interested in managing a larger operation? New Terra will need proper restaurants as it grows, and humans always respond well to familiar quality food. Bo-Ra's eyes widened. You're serious? I am always serious about food, and about rewarding loyalty. Over the next weeks, Thoran's promises became reality. Construction crews arrived to upgrade the colony's infrastructure. Medical facilities were built. The old failing water systems were replaced with Velrothi technology that could sustain 10 times the current population. Educational programs were established, but the most important change was how people thought about themselves. The colony had always been on the edge of failure, one disaster away from collapse. Now it had a future. Young people who'd planned to leave as soon as they could afford passage started talking about staying. Starting businesses. Building lives. Daewon found himself busier than he'd ever been. He met with colony leaders, consortium officials, and representatives from other human settlements. He helped negotiate agreements, mediate disputes, and explain human culture to confused Velrothi bureaucrats. It was exhausting and challenging, and absolutely nothing like scavenging in the wasteland. He loved every minute of it. 3 months after the rescue, Thorin returned to New Terra for an official visit. The colony organized a ceremony, which made Daewon uncomfortable, but Thorin insisted it was important for consortium politics. They stood together on a platform while thousands of colonists watched. Thorin gave a speech about partnership and mutual respect. Daewon tried not to look nervous in front of so many people. Afterward, they walked together through the colony. It looked different now, cleaner, more organized, but still recognizably the place Daewon had grown up in. You have done well, Thorin said. The colony thrives. The people are happy, and the consortium is learning valuable lessons from this experiment. It's not an experiment. It's people's lives. Yes. I am still learning to remember that. Thorin stopped walking and looked at Daewon. I have not properly thanked you for refusing my initial offer, for insisting on staying here. Why would you thank me for that? Because you reminded me that real change happens from the ground up, not the top down. I can issue all the orders I want from Velrath Prime, but without people like you here, living the changes, they would just be empty words. Thorin smiled. You are keeping me honest as you said you would. They continued walking. Eventually, they reached Bora's new restaurant. It was still modest compared to what it could be, but it was much bigger than her noodle stand. The smell of cooking food drifted through the open door. Bora saw them and waved. Come in. I'm testing new recipes. They ate together, the three of them, while Bora explained her plans for expansion.